Welcome back to Ambivalent Offenders. This is Jamie,
And this is Erin.
and we are back for our part 3. It's
Final
a rarity.
Final part.
Final part. The rarity to have a 3-parter, but this one definitely has a lot of action, as we know from last week. And those Italian punishments could have had its own section.
I'd like to say that we don't have those this time, but I would be lying because we do have some more and a lot more action. Normally, you'd think by the third part you would be winding down. No, we're not winding down. We're winding up.
Okay, well, we'll keep it brief here at the top then. One quick thing, if you are not somebody who follows our Instagram, well, one, you should. If you just search Ambivalent Offenders, you should pop up. But that's always our best place to search for things. Anyway, I posted this week as November, the idea of being thankful, and in this case, thankful for listeners. We have extended our open access to our Patreon. So you can join as a free member. Like we said before, there's no trick. You don't suddenly get charged in December. You can just stay a free member, or you want to support the show with a small donation. We have a $3 or $5 a month tiers where you get extra content. So, for example, one that for sure I'm going to record, possibly with Erin, depending on timing, for the Patreon is about female villains. Are female villains judged more harshly than male villains? And we'll talk about that.
I think we'll get into some of that even tonight as we approach judgment time for Caterina.
Right, exactly. So that will be a short that's on the Patreon. And if you do at the $3 a month in the future, you would get that one for free. I'm guessing that will probably at least be a half an hour of extra content. And then if you do the $5, you get 2 things of extra content. So another mini short, as well as a shout out here. You also get into giveaways. We have the $20 gift card to bookstore, Bishop and Wild, our sister-in-law's amazing Portland bookstore that you can also order stuff online, and you can vote for our future figures. Erin and I are thinking of doing can I say this?
Oh, yeah. Go for it. Yeah, I don't think we have to keep it a secret.
So the win on Patreon was Coco Chanel, which I still am going to do. But I think before we do that, we haven't really done a dueling quote unquote villains yet. So we're going to take 2 controversial figures from U.S. history, both from 1800s, although not exactly the same time period. But we're going to take, Erin's going to take Aaron Burr, sir, and I'm going to take John Brown. John Brown. And so we'll each do an episode on those 2, just a 1-parter for each. And then the biggest thing, though, is that we will decide who's the greater quote unquote villain. And we'll also have Erin's husband, Matt.
He's an expert.
Right. He's an expert, but he'll also listen to our arguments as well, and he'll share his opinions. So hopefully you like that idea. If you like that idea, I don't know, tell us. Tell us on Instagram.
And if not, then ignore, because we're going to do it anyway.
Right.
Tough luck.
Hopefully you'll enjoy it, and then you can let us know if you want us to do more dueling ones where they have something in common, and then we compare the 2. I can definitely see that being a fun series because there's plenty of ones to compare. That was a longer than expected thing about our Patreon. So again, Patreon, you can join free, no tricks, or you can join as a supportive member starting in December. It will go back to paid content only. But as I said before, there's no trick. You get a 7-day free trial if you want to try being a paying member. But right now, you don't have to. Still access the content. But in December, if you're like, yeah, I really liked what I heard, you can always upgrade. That's what I've got. So we're going to turn it over to Erin.
Yep,
I'm scared. Maybe I should have taken like a Zofran or something.
What is it?
I don't have a Zofran.
Who is afraid of little old Caterina? You should be.
More scared about the Italian people ripping
Well,
ripping people like chip bag.
Yeah. I mean, we're ready for some female rage. And if you're female, you might be ready for some too.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I think we deserve it. We deserve it, don't we?
Yes. So is the night to rage. We're going to let our feelings out.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll be like 0% villain.
I know. That's what. If you're following Instagram, I posted the Lucille Bluth, good for her. That's just going to be us the entire time. It might be. I'm in that headspace right now where I'm okay with her getting some vengeance. Like Jamie said, we left off last time with some very brutal punishments. After Caterina and her allies, they retook the city of Forli. So she's back in power. She's the regent for her young son.
But the main brothers got away.
Yes, they have. I don't think I talk about them. I think she does get to them. I'm assuming they do, but I did not put an update in there, so I probably should.
My new cheer for certain punishments will be chip bags. The chip bag punishment, just ripping somebody apart like a chip bag. And actually, like my cats do, because my cats, I was keeping individual things of chips in the closet, and my cats were going in there, grabbing the chip bags, and then thrashing them open. They wouldn't even eat the chips. It was just like a power
just for the fun of it. Yeah,
So I think it was a threat after listening to the last episode.
Yeah, why can I not find what happens to them? I'm pretty sure they died.
They're definitely dead at this point.
Oh, I know.
Is she involved or not?
That's what I'm trying to look. I don't want to say anything if it's not, so I'm looking. Why can I not find any information on them?
They changed their name. They became Mario and Luigi.
Or I pull them up and they just show me the Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed wiki. I don't want the Assassin's Creed wiki. Although, will it tell me if they're dead?
You didn't like my alternative for the history option? I'd even get a chuckle. You're just a girl trying to find answers.
Yeah,
they were brutally.
It's like, I'm assuming that she got them at some point. I can't confirm or deny that. So we're in okay, whatever.
We'll move on. We'll post an update on Instagram.
I'm sure she did, but we're focusing on Caterina here. So her immediate issue, though, was she had armies who came out to help, and they needed to go, but they're just chilling. They came to help her, which is great, but the problem is they wanted to sack the city.
But isn't it her city now?
Yeah, but the problem is they were like, we came for a sack, because if you're wondering, by the rules of war, they should have been able to go through the city, sack it, which means you get to take things from the city and quote unquote let off steam, which of course means indiscriminate killing and sexual violence, but that's just how it goes. Basically, these guys were like, well, we came all this way and we don't get anything out.
It's unfair because they chose to help support her.
Are you trying to figure out fairness with men? And
I know. Sorry. I tried to be way too logical.
Well, Caterina, she invites the leaders of the armies to dinner, and she's the one who's like, oh, you are not sacking the city. She said, no, you're not going to do it. Of course, they're upset, but she said, according to the records, that she didn't want to sack as, quote, I care about women.
Oh, somebody does.
It's almost as if it's a good thing to have women in charge. Like, they think of things men do not, like who the violence of a sack would impact. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, but yeah, that she's concerned about the citizens, and she knows that in a sack, it's always the most vulnerable who get hurt.
Well, way too logical.
Yeah, but so she sends them on their way. They do not get to sack the city. And so then now she has to get right to work. So she has little time to dwell on all of that. You know, a lot has happened. and she has to get right to work.
I know it's only been like days, but is there already pressure to marry because she's a woman?
Yeah, we'll talk about it here in a little bit. But first of all, I mean, she's a woman, but she's also a regent to her young son. I think the first things first, she's dealing with practicalities. One, the palace that she lived in with her family is now in shambles. Remember, they basically people came in and looted it once her husband died.
Right.
So she's going to continue to live in the fortress of Rivaldino. So that's the big fortress. She does eventually like get a little bit more homey, but
I was about to say,
homey is a no. She does. She renovates it later, and her rooms are called Il Paradiso, so the paradise. In terms of ruling on behalf of her son, she lowers the taxes for Forli, which obviously had been, if you remember, that had been the catalyst, or at least one of them, for the death of her husband.
Right, because they hadn't been paying any taxes, and then they had to start.
Yep, exactly. So good idea. Good girl. But this, of course, would mean that money is going to be tight again because you don't have taxes. Enough that she's ending up having to pawn her own jewels to get cash.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not an ideal place to be in for a ruler. And this is where also we're talking about marriage and her as a widow. It wasn't necessarily that people were pushing her to marry, but there were men with their eyes on her, including this handsome noble who was 29 years to her 25 years. And he's a noble whose family had actually ruled Forli for a while before. So good credentials. He's hot. Also good.
Let's say he's not super old. That would surprise me.
No. Supposedly he proposed to her with shooting 2 arrows over the ramparts of the fortress. Hot. Like I assume it does. Like, marry me. Yeah. Well, there's rumors about this marriage, but it actually never happens. It kind of sounds like she got some fun in, but then decided against actually marrying.
Oh, really? So it was her who decided no.
It seems like they got it on. She probably blew off some steam, but then she was like, no, I don't think so.
For an actual marriage.
Yeah. The people who would actually mention just the idea of her marrying this guy actually got thrown in prison for even mentioning it.
Well,
she was not happy about people talking about it.
I guess since she had no say in her first marriage, she's going to want to that was say in her second.
Yeah. That guy, she wasn't going to marry, but there'd soon be someone that Caterina had her eyes on that would become serious. He's a 20-year-old, so younger. Get it, girl?
Baby.
He's the brother of Rivaldino, the fortress's keeper, Tommaso Fio. Remember we talked about Tommaso in the last episode? Yeah. If you don't remember, he helped Caterina outsmart the Orsi's and the papacy. Well, his brother is Giacomo.
Whack-a-mole.
Giacomo. And Caterina had actually known him. She'd known him since he was 15, and he had been one of her husband's stable grooms. So the stable boy, quite literally stable boy.
Yeah, that's a little sketchy.
It's himbo territory. He's very attractive, but not very educated. He's just kind of rustic, is the impression that you get of him. She's so smitten that she actually decides to replace Tommaso Fio. So she replaces his brother with him as the keeper of the fortress.
Oh, really?
Ooh. Yeah. So she's like, you helped me out, but I want my hot boyfriend as the keeper of the fortress where I live. The way that she does this is either badass or awful. So I'm going to let you choose. So it's August day. They're having a great day. So she's at the fortress with her son, who's technically the ruler, and her lover, again, Tommaso's own brother, Giacomo. They all lunch together. Everything's seeming normal.
Are all her other kids there too?
Fortress. They are, but I don't know. I can't remember if they mention them at this lunch.
I just more meant, were they?
Yeah, they're all, So they're lunching together. Everything's fine. Caterina then takes Tommaso alone into the gardens, which she had just planted, showing them off because she likes gardening. She likes botany. Tommaso kind of hesitates because he's actually supposed to just, since he's a keeper, he's not really supposed to leave the fortress, but he's won over by her charm. She's like, it's fine. Come on, let's go into the garden.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's won over by her charm. She's hot, and she's wearing, to quote the book, the sheer linen shift covered with a thin cotton smock. The light material revealed her form as she stood in the sunlight.
Oh, come on.
The trap. Tommaso, it's a trap. Her body's a trap. They just have a grand old time. They're alone. They're chatting in the orchards. They ate some figs together.
Very romantic.
And then she asks him to escort her to her brooms. Wink. But before they get to the bedroom, he's arrested. And then she says that he's arrested because of his indecent behavior. So he has to go. He has to leave. He can't be the keeper of the fortress because of this indecent behavior.
Okay. I don't know how I feel about that. That was a trap.
It was a trap. I told you. And now that leaves room for her lover, Tommaso's own brother, the hot one.
Yeah. Brother's kind of an asshole too, but I don't expect more from him if he's just the hot one.
He's 20.
Finally, yeah.
But things are kind of lining up nicely for Caterina. It's in 1491. She's got her new piece, and her lands are getting back into some semblance of order. Money's always going to be an issue, but hey, when wasn't it at this point? They've always had money trouble. And she even gets her himbo Giacomo knighted. So he goes from stable boy to knight. So an upwards trajectory for him.
Yeah.
And it's actually, it's an open secret that they're living together, unmarried. We haven't gotten married. And even in Italy, where illegitimate children are welcome, that we talked about in the first part, this is still shocking.
Yeah, Catholics don't like that.
Yeah, and as always, men have been allowed to do whatever they want since the beginning of time. Women, not so much, especially when you're a woman in power. And if you're a regent, if you're the mother, the regent, you have to almost be above reproach.
Right, yeah. You have even more standards put on you.
Yeah, it's not unlike Catherine de Valois, who she shacks up with another stable boy,
these stable boys.
Owen Tudor, and that's where the Tudors come from. So former queen who shacks up with the Tudor, and then pretty much, she doesn't have any say in her young son's life after that. But yeah, it's a lot. But she seemed too happy to care. And she's just, gardening. She's making her own medicine with plants and herbs, which she loves. It's very, very Claire from Outlander. Yeah, and of course, also like Claire banging the young, hot, former stable boy, the dream.
Yeah.
Living the dream. Well, a secret marriage did likely happen between the two. At least that's what Caterina says on her deathbed. Whether or not that actually happened doesn't really matter. The point is that this love affair is going to become if you hadn't imagined, it's becoming a political problem for Caterina.
Right. Yeah. Back when I took a job at a Catholic school in 2013, I had to sign like a morality clause. And I was like, I do live with my, at the time, boyfriend. That can be a problem. And it was like, just basically don't ever bring it up again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, don't ever, no.
Yeah, that's kind of like this. And the problem is ours was an open secret too. This, again, it's open secret. Some people are looking in the other way and assume that like this was not going to last. This is, again, she's going to hit it and then quit it. But Giacomo's rise meant that those who helped Caterina, especially get back her power, do kind of feel sidelined by this nobody.
Well, yeah, his brother especially. He was like a major player in helping her, and then
well, does it make you feel better? Tommaso does get quote unquote rewarded. He gets to marry her sister, so she does sort of give him a good marriage. So he doesn't get killed. So we'll say that
makes me feel a little better.
Well, this is a quote from the book that Caterina and Giacomo's open cohabitation in Imola hinted at a secret marriage, a serious threat to political stability. They saw no good in the groom turned knight. Jealousy grew into deep hostility, and plans were afoot to murder the countess and her lover. So, Caterina, you in danger, girl.
I will say there's going to be some chip bagging happening. Seems like whenever they're not pleased, instead of like, maybe let's have a conversation, it's like, let's kill them.
Yeah, that's the differences between the like Italian states and some of the other European countries. In other countries, you force out the regent, place them with somebody new. In Italy, you kill them. You kill them.
Can't you guys just talk it out?
No.
Figure this stuff out.
No. Where would the fun be in that? No, that would lead to no human pinata.
Well, no, or chip bagging.
But so, like I said, there's these assassinations attempts. One plot's found out before Caterina and Giacomo walked into it. And the would-be assassins were caught, and their identity was actually not her enemies, but people she knew, and, quote, people who only had reason to be grateful to her for she had made them prosperous and exiled their enemies. So when you're pissing off your former allies, it's not good. Not good at all.
No. And they just were so slighted by that.
Yeah, it's just, we'll get a little bit here to what Giacomo is doing, but yeah, he's basically elbowed everybody else out. And this rustic guy doesn't really know what he's doing. He's kind of ruining the show. So the plot was actually to take out Caterina and replace her as regent with essentially a regency council of citizens. Of course, she imprisoned them. She didn't kill these assassins.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just life in prison. So the thing is, she actually had bigger problems to solve other than assassinations. One problem in particular, she's pregnant.
Oh,
yeah. This is
Giacomo.
A world without birth control, so it's not surprising that Caterina finds herself pregnant.
And again, I was curious if that would happen.
Yeah, and again, she does say on her deathbed that they got married. We don't know. So maybe they did. Maybe there was a shotgun wedding, but she does what women in the past always did to hide it. She wears some loose clothes, and then she mysteriously disappears from court for an extended period of time, feigning illness. I'm like picturing like in sitcoms, there's a lot of holding things over her stomach area.
Flower pots, big bags.
That's pretty much what I'm picturing.
She's like, yeah, I'm gonna go on a little vacation for a while, but I'll be back.
Yeah. I'm just like, damn, Caterina. Like is she looking a little bloated?
Yeah. She's a fertile lady.
Yeah. This is kind of when we think the secret marriage happened, although we don't exactly know when. Tell us when.
Is Giacomo happy about it? Because it's like, would be his heir.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he's upset. So they do have a son who ends up getting raised in the castle. He's in the castle, but they say he's the child of Giacomo by an quote unquote unknown woman. Wink, wink, wink.
Oh, that's weird. So
nobody actually believed that.
Well, no, I know. Well, that's what I mean. That's why it's weird.
Well,
because like she grew up in her father's palace as a bastard.
But that's the difference between
the double
allowed
standard.
when you're it's not when you're
marriage.
Activating. Again, the populace knew, and there were rumors and jokes. This one old man who was an artisan dared to speak out loud about it and said that it was her son, Caterina, has him beaten so severely that he ends up dying from the beating. So, yeah, and it wouldn't be until Caterina's own deathbed that she would finally admit to being the child's mother.
Did the kid know?
Oh yeah, I mean it was. Yeah, I don't think they're inside the palace. I don't think there was any doubt.
I wasn't sure if she treated him like a.
No, he was. It was raised in similar circumstance, like with the other kid.
Yeah.
Well, the year 1492 would be a year of massive changes that's going to impact Caterina and her dominions. Florence at this time is actually in a state of disarray after the passing of the great Lorenzo de' Medici, Lorenzo the Magnificent, that we talked about, I think, in the last one. So the Medicis, their rule and hold over Florence is never going to be as solid. So things are a little bit iffy in the rest of the Italian peninsula. The Pope Innocent, he dies as well, with the new pope being someone we've already mentioned, Rodrigo Borgia.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. And this would have been actually a good sign for Caterina and her family. As we know, Rodrigo Borgia was actually her first son's godfather. We mentioned him before when he was only a cardinal. And godparents at this time are considered like as good as blood relations. That's fine. That it's not.
It really links your family. Yeah, it's not just like a
thing. So it's not going to match her being the niece-in-law of a pope like she was before, but it's still good to have a pope that somebody you knew and seemed to like.
Yeah.
But by 1494, things get even more turbulent in Italy in general, as there's a new king of Naples. He's no friend of Milan, which we know that Milan's being ruled by
her family
brother. Yep. So Caterina's brothers ruling it, at least nominally. Her brother's kind of a party prince, and it's basically being ruled by a strong advisor who also happened to be the prince's uncle. What we need to know about this is that Milan ends up inviting the French king into Italy to help sort out their trouble, because the king actually has a claim to Naples. It's kind of a mess. What you need to know is the French are getting involved in this internal Italian city-state politics, but there's the fighting between Milan and Naples, and France is getting involved, which means there's a lot of armies on the move in the Italian peninsula. It's not great if you live there, even if you're not from Naples or Milan, because if you know where we're located in Italy, there's a large swath in between.
So they're going to be moving through.
Yep.
Are they in a conquering mood for other places?
Yes. Things get even messier because Caterina's brother actually dies in Milan about this time, and then that uncle takes over. We don't know if it was murder, maybe, who knows?
He's probably just like, I'm doing the work anyways.
Might as well. Yeah. And now you're like, okay, well, where does Caterina factor into this? Like I said, Forli sits right in the line between those armies. So,
really?
Sort of right in the middle. And to quote the book, quote, Forli was still technically under papal control. Caterina's authority as regent stemmed from papal decree, and therefore Caterina was legally bound and loyal to the Pope.
But that wouldn't be too big of a deal because it's her.
Yes, you would
in theory.
In theory.
Yeah.
At this time, the Borgia Pope, Alexander, the problem is the Pope's on the side of Naples. So the opposite side of Milan, which is her family.
Why? Why is he in?
Naples has ties to Spain, which is where Rodrigo Borgia's from. So it's family ties from the area. So you're thinking the papacy and Naples are up against each other. And then you have Milan and the French. So it's a lot. And Caterina's in a lose-lose situation because the Pope's supporting Naples, but her family and she are from Milan. And she had been helped by Milan, too, after the problems with her husband being assassinated. She's trying to remain neutral, but that would not be possible.
I would say, how do you do that?
In her backyard, there are 20,000 men there with the French king.
Jesus.
So far, they had not caused much problem with the populace, but the longer they're there, the more restless they're going to get. It's not a good place to be in.
Right.
And the Pope really wants to get her as an ally to Naples and the papacy.
Oh, really? Does he think it's possible, even though...
Oh, yeah.
They're tied him off?
He sends Cardinal Raffaello Riario. He was the nephew to her late husband. We talked about he's the one who helped her take back Forli.
Yeah.
He came in on a white horse. The Pope sends him to try to convince her to be on the side of Naples. What the cardinal finds there is disturbing because Giacomo Fio, he has a seat at the literal table. So a lot of political power for our former stable boy with little education. He's advising his boo on all matters of state. No. For all of Caterina's girl power, badass moves early in her life, she's really now under Giacomo's thumb.
Why?
There's obviously some sort of, I don't want to say abusive relationship, but there's something there.
That dynamic.
Yeah, people do notice it. They note that she seems changed. And so now he's controlling everything and closing the gates of the city to the military. He's like, no, we're good. We're just trying to play neutral. Both of those, Naples and Milan and the French, they intensify their courtship of Caterina.
Right.
And they know that she's in need of money, always.
Right.
So a Borgia Pope offers a not so subtle bribe for her to support Naples against Milan. And if you know anything about the Borgias, this was par for the course. Corruption, whatever. Of course, this was to Giacomo Fio. He's seeing that giant bribe with dollar signs in his eyes like he's a cartoon character. And so Forli and Caterina actually decide to back Naples over her own family in Milan.
Well,
yes. And again, it's her little stable boy is making the deal. And part of the deal would be that Naples would help support Forli from the French who were at Forli's doorstep. So again, we've got 20,000 men just hanging out, ready to do something. Naples say, yeah, we'll help you with that French problem because Forli's not big enough to hold out against.
I was about to say, how big of an army do they have?
No, not 20,000 men.
They have some vicious people, but not an army.
Nothing against 20,000. Well, the French and the Milanese, they take a fortress near Imola first. That fortress holds out strong, but obviously outmatched in the end. And the soldiers who remained got drawn and quartered. Women were carried out of the church. It was so violent and awful. And Caterina feels betrayed because she had backed Naples in order to get help.
Yeah.
That was supposed to help her, but help did not come. Because of this, Caterina goes, fuck that. I'm going back to Naples.
That's what I would do. Seems prime for a fuck that muffin.
Yeah, so that gets the French off her doorstep. They continue to make their way through Tuscany, making their way down to Naples. The French are gone for now, but she had more domestic things to deal with at this point because her relationship with Giacomo Fio is causing a lot of problems. Everyone from the Florentines to the papacy knew he's the one who held the strings in the relationship. And they're all worried that there's no end to what Caterina would do to make him happy. So there's a quote from a Florentine ambassador who warned, the Countess will bury her children, her allies, and all her belongings. She will sell her soul to the devil. She will give her state to the Turk before she gives up Giacomo Fio. There was quite real concern that her lover would kill her own son because her oldest son's turning 16 in 1495. So if he wants complete control over Forli and Imola,
right, that's going to be dangerous.
Would she have let Giacomo kill her son? Hard to say. I doubt it. She really did care for her children. The point is, people around her thought that she would. As we're talking about, and we'll be talking about later, villainizing females, like that's obviously like one of the worst. Right. It's the Medea and your children. Yeah. Her oldest son and Giacomo, they were at each other's throats. They hate each other. At one point during a fight, Giacomo even slaps the teen.
Oh, that's not good.
It's like a stepson and a stepfather not getting along. Tale as old as time. Within the court, a court plot is brewing, of course, because of this. There's a prominent man at court named Giovanni Getti and his wife, Rosa. Rosa's actually a lady in waiting and friend to Caterina. They're going to take the lead on this assassination attempt. Yes, we have another one. I told you we would not be done with
Jesus.
To quote the book, this couple knew more than anyone else how far Caterina had regressed under the influence of Giacomo. They hardly recognized her as the confident woman they had once admired. And it's also going to be a plot backed by priests and clerics and one of Getty's servants. There's a whole conspiracy going on here. August 27th, 1495, Caterina and Giacomo, they have a picnic with her 3 eldest children. Everybody's getting along. It's great. They went hunting. They're laughing. They're singing. On their way back home, Caterina and her daughter, Bianca, they're in a carriage. And the men, so her sons and Giacomo, are on horseback behind them with the bodyguards.
Yeah.
They get to the gate of Forli, and that's when the assassins separate Giacomo.
No. Oh, just take Giacomo. Just take him.
Yeah, don't worry. It's just him. Giacomo asks Getty, again, this prominent nobleman, how he was. Are you well? Quite well, came the response. And that was when Giacomo was stabbed by Getty's servant in the back. Ooh. Obviously, Caterina's and her daughter in the carriage. You can hear something going on. She immediately jumps into action, and her and obviously the kids, they flee on horseback. She has to leave. She has to leave her lover, dead, dying, disfigured, on the road. Doesn't know if they're going to kill her. They were going to kill her.
Right.
So she has to flee, run.
What do you do? Just wait there and be like, okay, well, I'll wait till they get to me.
She was not one for sitting around, but girl was, shall we say, not pleased to have her second husband assassinated. It's bad luck to be on the second man, but 2 assassinated, that's a lot. Especially this time, this is a man that she was either in love with or deeply in lust with. So a difference, too. This is where the bloodshed that would follow this assassination is going to cloud her reputation, not just at the time, but for centuries since.
Oh, I'm sure.
So far, we've got a little bit squeamish about bloody punishments, but she's acted within the bounds of war, what was expected at the time in terms of reprisals. This time she's gonna stray outside of it.
We know she didn't really feel that much about her other husband.
Yeah.
Right. So this is like a female rage.
Oh, this is times like 1,000. She is so angry at this. We're in a bloody age. We talked about the murders in the Pazzi conspiracy getting hung outside of the Florentine square in the windows, but she's going to unleash some indiscriminate violence that goes beyond that. You expect retribution after assassinations, but what you don't expect was that women and children are going to become victims of the spree. So trigger warning for child death, trigger warning for squeamishness. First, the assassin, Giovanni Getti, he's not going to last long. He's chased into a cemetery, and he's given the Dante treatment, literally. The book indicates this is how murderers were dealt with in that circle of hell in the Inferno. No. Do you want to guess? I don't want to guess at all.
How murderers were
dealt with in that circle of hell in the Inferno.
Chopped into pieces.
Close. They, quote, cleaved his head from crown to teeth, then lopped off his fingers and other extremities, scattering them among the graves.
Yeah, that was pretty close. I'm getting good at this.
One of the priests who was involved was tortured by fire to give up the names of the plotters. He did that and more. He even names Caterina's own eldest son, Ottaviano, and Cardinal Riario, her first husband's nephew and her one-time savior.
Are these probably true, or is this just him?
We don't quite know. We know that they didn't like Giacomo, so I think it's more likely than not, or maybe they knew about it but didn't stop it. But that priest is killed by tying his feet to the back of a horse, riding it to where Giacomo was killed, and kind of all over. Somehow, and probably, he's still alive when the soldiers beat and stabbed him.
Right.
He's probably like, could you just have done that first? Yeah. I'm like, is it grisly? Yeah. Am I desensitized by the last few days that I'm just shrugging my shoulders at this moment? Also, yes.
Same between that and after hearing the chip bag punishments. Another horse dragging people, I have a feeling though she's going to kill her kid, and I don't like that.
Well, the main assassins are dead now. So Caterina might have just stopped there. She should have, but she does not. Getty's wife, Rosa, you remember, was one of her friends and ladies in waiting. Her and her children were murdered by being tossed down a well to die by either the fall or starvation.
Oh, my God.
They had one child who was a 5-year-old son who had not been there. He had not been with the family, but Caterina's soldiers found him and they slit his throat.
Oh, my God.
One of the others, assassins, mistress, and their children were killed as well. So we have multiple families being killed. Again, violent age, violent time. This is not the norm. When it went public, there's this huge uproar.
I'm sure.
Of course, the question is, one, did Caterina order these retributions?
Yeah.
One chronicler said no, she didn't. However, the book points out, quote, whether or not Caterina gave the order for the murder of innocents, she never intervened to save Getty's wife and children. Nor did she call a halt when her soldiers rounded every family known to be hostile to Giacomo Fio, and threw them into dungeons, hanged them in the square, or drove them into exile. Caterina had lost control of her state, her position, and her dignity through her passion for Fio. And in avenging her death, she seemed to take leave of her soul.
Jesus, lady, come on.
Ooh. Over a himbo? I know, over a himbo.
But do we know anything more about her son and her relationship with her son?
So, but first, this is going to cast a very long shadow over her reputation. But again, and it's not going to end there. Oh, God. You thought that was over. No. Rumors and accusations are flying. Again, some accusing her oldest son of being in the plot. We know that, and we do know that he didn't like his stepfather, so it would make sense.
Right.
So, well, she doesn't kill him. She places him under house arrest. So,
okay.
That's pretty good. It's not a or a unique Dantean punishment. No. Her first husband's illegitimate son, he also seems to have questioned these reprisals. And he gets locked in a dungeon for 18 months.
Okay.
But
then we don't question him.
That's the thing is, at this point, it's not just the people who are involved. Even those who were known to just not like Giacomo felt the wrath of her.
Yeah.
They're joining people in dungeons. Their house are being pillaged and razed to the ground in classical fashion.
Her son's just in a massive grounded for the foreseeable future.
No PlayStation, no smartphone, definitely no iPad. No iPad, sorry. The numbers vary, but the book states it's probably around 38 people murdered in the aftermath.
Wow.
Well, that's murdered, and then obviously a ton more punished. So, how do we feel? How do we feel now? How do we feel about her now? This is where I'm like, insert, we were rooting for you meme.
Yeah.
This is where I'm like, I told you we wanted to canonize her as a badass woman. And I'm like, maybe we should hold off a little bit.
This one's harder to justify and swallow.
Especially people like, again, her friend you put in a well with her kids.
I know. But thank you for reminding me of that.
You're welcome. Even in her own time, this is the nadir of her reputation. Even the Pope Alexander, hardly a paragon of moral virtue himself, disavows what she'd done. There's a quote from the book that says he spoke of, quote, the unheard of bloodthirstiness committed to satisfy her passion. We'll point out the hypocrisy because his son's Cesare Borgia, who commits quite a few of his own bloodthirsty sins. So let's point out the hypocrisy. Cesare quite literally kills his sister's husband and probably his brother. So, let's not judge.
That's different.
Yes.
Different families.
Just family drama. You're thinking a woman's reputation means a lot, especially back then. And hers is in tatters. And no amount of killing is going to bring Giacomo back. To quote the book again, Caterina was in a private hell. Her vendetta had brought her only disgrace. Her disclosure that she and Giacomo had been secretly married impressed no one as a reasonable excuse for the slaughter. Overcome with misery, Caterina chose to live among the dead. This has not made her happy. She is very depressed. She honors and remembers her murdered husband by having a statue in bronze of him installed in her home, like a daily reminder of what she had lost. If you want to talk about, does she feel bad about this, or does she ever
reckon with it?
Reckon with it. She does bare her soul too. There's a infamous priest monk, Savonarola. I don't know if you've heard of him in Florence. He's famous. You might have heard the Bonfire of the Vanities. We don't have time to get into it here, but it's this big movement in Florence. And the Bonfire of the Vanities is when he basically has all these Florentines throw makeup and art and things into a fire, things that are make you vain. He has a major conflict with the Borgia Pope Alexander, because of course he does. But he's very popular at this time. She writes to Savonarola about the massacre that she had wrought upon Forli. So apparently it did weigh on her. If you're thinking, well, did she not feel any remorse about it? At some point she did.
Is this many years later, or?
Savonarola, he gets executed. He dies in 1498. We're going to come up on 1496, and he dies in 1498. So within years of that. As if reflecting the Countess's mood, 1496 is the coldest on record. People are starving as famine hits, and we get the first appearance of the French disease on record at this time. Do you know what the French disease is?
Summit. Oh no. Shit. I know. I was going to say it's a STD.
Yeah, it's syphilis. So there has to be a joke about. I'm like, I need to come up with a joke about Caterina's himbo dying and syphilis appearing in the aftermath. Jokes aside, it's just one thing after another. So it's just feeling biblical in nature.
Well, clearly people are having a bunch of sex to stay warm, and they're passing on the STDs.
And there's this semi-long passage from the book, which I'm going to read anyway, because I think it really hits home this really dark, lonely place that Caterina's found herself in. At this time, quote, the woman who had bravely stormed into plague-stricken areas, fought off assassins and usurpers, and survived the delivery of 7 children, was paralyzed by sorrow, shame, and disappointment. In a desperate letter to her uncle, she confided thoughts about drowning herself. So she's in a bad place.
Probably say trigger warning.
Sorry. Trigger warning.
For that.
Sorry.
No, too late. But for self-harm.
Of course. Yeah, she's still reaching. There's not much time to mope and cry. All of her problems didn't go away as she mourns. She had to get up and get to work. She buys grain and salt to sell cheap to her subjects. Since, there's this epic famine. So she gives out 500 pounds of flour for free. She'd always been thoughtful towards the poorest of her people, and she helps form what would be called the Company of Charity, which helps the starving and the poor get food. Closer to home, this is when she razes her own palace to the ground to erase, quote, every memory of that place that she had suffered shame and disrespect. So this is where she's rebuilding the palace, rebuilding hope. But another tragedy strikes when her 12-year-old son, Giovanni, dies of an illness at this time. So she had been lucky. She had survived 7 childbirths, and none of her children had died young.
That's pretty remarkable.
This was a really bitter blow, and so she throws herself into redesigning the Rovaldino fortress, like I said, into this personal plush palace, complete with an herb garden for her potion. She did potions and face cream, and like her own personal Sephora. Girl spilled the recipe. 1496 doesn't let up. It brings a whole new set of tragedies. Her sister dies in childbirth. This does seem to be like a catalyst to her making amends with her children. It's not that she hasn't been loving, but she's been in such a dark place. And obviously her eldest son, we know she's
he's been grounded.
Well, they reconcile at this time. She dives into planning a marriage for him, which hilariously it falls through because the girl decides she wants to be a nun instead. So her son goes off. He does some military stuff with minimal success. Unfortunately, we'll see he takes after his dad, not his mom. Unfortunately. What seems to get Caterina out of her funk more than anything is, yes, say it with me, we've got another man. And it's not just any man, it's a Medici. His name's Giovanni. He's from the junior branch of the Medici, so not like the main ones that are ruling. So, I mean, he's still pretty wealthy, but he's not ruling Florence.
He's not top tier Medici.
No, he's junior. He's 30 to her 33 years at this time.
She likes them young.
The book really represents this relationship as like her one true love. Her first husband's an arranged marriage, far from her equal in terms of temperament and intelligence. We know her second, Giacomo, is beneath her in status, kind of a himbo and over its head. This is like a true meeting of the minds. He loves
good.
Yeah, Giovanni, he loves literature, science, beautiful things, and he had wit to match Caterina. Of course, it's not long before he's living with her in the fortress that she had made home. They even went into business together. They shipped grain from Forli to Florence for a pretty penny. So they're both
nice.
They're both getting money out of it.
Yeah.
When asked about their relationship, Caterina demurred, saying, "According to the chatterboxes, I have had any number of husbands. I am no longer of that age when others should think that these youthful appetites reign in me. Foremost on my mind is my duty to govern these states." Girl, we know you still have them appetites. I mean, we know you two are boning. I mean, you're 33. You're not an old maid.
You young.
And unlike the fire of that last relationship, this one does really. It settles her down. It settles Caterina down. Even her children like him. They love him.
Yeah, sounds like way better. Way better.
To quote the book, as a member of a ruling family from a greater state, Giovanni would pose no threat to her sons. And at long last, Caterina knew peace with a man whom all her children respected and admired. So, everybody knew what was going on. But since it's providing money, again, grain business is booming, stability.
Right.
There's just not that tension that there was with Giacomo.
Right. As long as the economy's doing well.
And yet again, 35-year-old Caterina, she falls pregnant August 1497, which means, yes, another secret marriage, world without birth control.
She can have another boy.
She does.
Winemaker.
Ludovico Sforza de' Medici would be born April 6th. He's later just called Giovanni after his dad. And it's also around this time that her most famous portrait's created. So that's the one. I'll send it to you. That's the one you've seen before. I'll have you describe it.
So that's her 9th kid.
8th. That will be her last. Spoiler. She will not have any more kids, but having 8 kids, her not dying in childbirth, none of them, besides her one, died at 12, but it's still a pretty good. So yeah, here is, I'm just sending you, this is her most famous portraits. It's made by a artist who worked with Botticelli and Da Vinci.
I don't know if it's the most flattering of the kind of Botticelli ones, but she's got that strawberry blondish hair, all on the red side, kind of those, again, Botticelli curls.
She's holding some flowers.
She's kind of got this nice clavicle showing.
In the background is Imola and Forli. You can see she's 35. Yeah. Unfortunately for Caterina, this period of happiness with her soulmate cut short. Instead of violence, Giovanni's felled by disease. He'd been sick with gout. He goes on a trip to take some waters and he sickens and dies. Luckily, she's summoned and she was able to get to him before he did. So
it's good.
Giovanni, the love of her life, dies in her arms. Very sad. It's like she finally gets this sort of peace. She has a peaceful family. Things are going good. And
how many years did they have together?
Just a handful. They met when she was 33. She gave birth at 35, about 2 years or so. Not that long. And unfortunately, the politics of the age, there's not much time to close her out herself off and mourn because she's got the biggest battle of her life. Now she's going to go up against Cesare Borgia, who's the Pope's illegitimate son. Obviously, I'm like, I don't know why I have to say illegitimate, but the Pope's illegitimate son, because if he's Pope, he's supposed to be a priest.
I know. But it's funny. I wouldn't have even, I would just been like, yeah, the Pope's son. So she's going to go up against him. So what makes her go against?
Or, I was going to explain that.
I know. I want to know.
Well, Cesare Borgia had previously been a cardinal, but he'd been released in order to spend time doing what he loved best, killing people, again, including his own sister's husband and his own brother. He's a skilled warrior. He's brutal. He's Caterina's match in every way.
Not like a rom-com where they fall in love because they're both...
No. So what happens is, wouldn't have been too much of a surprise for Caterina that in May of 1499, the Pope, he issues this papal bull where he quite literally calls Caterina a daughter of iniquity, which, yes, queen, apparently this is the first time that's been used against a woman, so groundbreaking. The important part about this papal bull is that he says Caterina sends out as ruler. Cesare, his son, would be taking over that land. Because again, remember we talked about that. She technically holds it based on the Pope. Well, this Pope saying, nah, I think I want my son to have that nepotism. Plain and simple. And there's going to be no amount of negotiation that's going to change it. It's actually around this time that Machiavelli comes and he negotiates with Caterina for Florence's support. She ends up getting the better of him, which ends up leading him to write all these bad things about her, including he's the one who talks about her lifting the skirts.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Very predictable for men.
I got mad, so now you got to make her look bad.
Speaking of Machiavelli, The Prince it's based on Cesare Borgia. Awesome. And also, another thing is that a lot of Renaissance portraits of Jesus is also probably based on Cesare Borgia, which that will blow your mind. Look up Cesare Borgia and you'll see. Anyway, war's coming for her. It's on her doorstep, whether Caterina liked it or not. It just seems like the universe is raining down tests. So before the armies are at her gates, the bubonic plague hits again. She brings in doctors and distributes free food to the people of the city. So because of this, the casualties are actually really low. So go Caterina. But then the plague's followed by another plague, the French and Cesare Borgia. So you might be like, why are the French here with Cesare?
Yeah.
Long story short, the Pope and the French have ganged up again together. The little quid pro quo for the Pope support. For the Pope support, Cesare gets help getting these lands in Italy, and Cesare was also given. He's a duke in France, and he also marries. He has a French bride. Yeah. So after he gives up becoming a cardinal, because kind of have to do that in order to marry. The Pope and the French are in bed together. This is when the Pope officially deposes the Riario, so that's Girolamo, her first husband. Yeah. Right, that they are the ones who are supposed to be ruling Forli and Imola. This is when he says, nope, effective immediately, you guys have to leave. This is Cesare's now. So Caterina is preparing her region for war. She sends out her children to Florence, including her eldest son, who's technically the ruler. But like, we don't him there. Yeah, we don't need you here. Unfortunately for Caterina, the people of Forli don't have the stomach to fight, and they essentially give the city up to Cesare right away.
Yeah, I was about to say, that seems like it's a lot to fight.
They're just like, no, it's fine here. So Caterina's going to have to stage another siege at Rivaldino, her fortress home, which she had nicknamed Paradise. So she's holding out in her fortress. Cesare arrives and they have this little shouting match back and forth from the rampart. She's up there. She calls the Pope a liar, which really pisses him off because that's his dad. Yeah. That's my dad you're talking about. He thought she wanted to talk terms. She comes out on the drawbridge. He meets her halfway there. And then the drawbridge starts to come up, like, in order to trap him. He narrowly escapes.
Oh, wow.
But she almost got him, another honeypot. He's like, oh, the hot girl, we got to go over there. He's getting, obviously, increasingly angry. And
Cesare, that would make me a little angry.
Yeah, Cesare already has a bad temper. You don't want to make Cesare angry. He's not a good guy. He wouldn't appear on Ambivalent Offenders. He's just bad, unfortunately. In the Borgia's The Show with Jeremy Irons, Cesare is really hot. I'm really attracted to him. Got to sort things out by thinking how attractive he is
and make him as bad on the show.
He's still pretty bad. Still pretty bad.
No, they tried to redeem him in the ways because he's hot.
No, not really. The siege is starting to become a tourist attraction at this point. People want to see the famous Tigress of Forli facing down Cesare Borgia.
Right. This is a repeat, but with Cesare.
Yeah, people are flocking to the area. It says, witness the most ruthless man in Italy thwarted by this fearless woman. Later, it would be written by someone who had heard, he wasn't there, but he had heard about Caterina's effort. Quote, there had never been seen a woman with so much spirit. So good. During this intense siege and battle of the fortress, Caterina, she donned her own armor. One of the only few armor at the time, not many women had it. So that alone, it has Saint Catherine, her patron saint, on it. But she's facing some really bad odds. Cesare has 12,000 mercenaries with 2,000 veteran troops from the King of France and another 2,000 Spanish soldiers. Remember, the Borgias are from Spain, so yeah, got some Spanish soldiers there. And while previous weapons of war, like battering rams, wouldn't do much to the heavy fortress walls, war had changed. They had cannon and they had artillery now. So Cesare has 5 cannons alone pointing at the walls, in addition to other weapons of war that would just shoot projectiles onto the wall. Cesare puts a heavy bounty on Caterina's head, but nobody betrays her at this time. They would have made a lot of money. They don't.
Like, if I get caught, I know what she does to her enemies.
But both sides know that time's ticking, and time is important for both, because sieges are difficult because, one, inside the walls, it's hard because at some point food runs out, morale goes down. There's only 1,000. She only has 1,000 soldiers to his over 12,000. He has over 12,000. If you're on outside the walls, you're contending with sickness. You usually get dysentery.
Right.
And also lack of money was huge, which is never good when it's an army of mercenaries. They want their money. They want the cash.
Right. They're not fighting for moral reasons.
No. Why do they care about Forli? Unfortunately for Caterina, now irate Cesare, who's been getting beat by a woman, he spends 3 weeks outside those walls just stewing and attacking. He begins to attack the weakest part of the wall. And finally, the artillery breaks through that section of the wall. Yeah, some of Caterina's soldiers abandoned her then. However, Caterina keeps fighting on the front line. So she's actually fighting. She's doing the fighting with the sword, side by side with her men for 2 hours. She's being told to retreat. Apparently, she wounded quite a number of men with her sword.
Nice.
Remember, we knew that she was taught. I remember at the beginning that she was taught how to fight. So she's fighting right with them in the mix. Eventually, at some point, she tells her men to basically light everything on fire, create a little wall of fire. It doesn't matter. I mean, the numbers just are not on her side. She attempts to get back in, and she does. She's inside. She can't hold out for so long, but then it appears there's an inside man. Somehow a French dude, we don't know how, a French soldier gets inside. There's a lot of speculation about who would have betrayed her. We just don't know. But he takes her, and now she's captured. The fortress has fallen. Cesare has it. There's at least 700 dead people, like 700 dead outside, at least outside of the walls.
Okay.
And this is where Cesare takes her captive. This is going to be a trigger warning for sexual assault. Trigger warning. There are stories, unsubstantiated maybe, that Cesare sexually assaults Caterina while in his care, or you can call it that. With Cesare's reputation, I wouldn't be surprised. Apparently, he told his men she defended her fortresses better than her virtue. To quote the book, others who had caught a glimpse of the Countess imprisoned in Cesare's room said that although she spoke very little and often looked as she had been crying, she still held her head high. At first, he basically is keeping her under lock and key in his rooms. He's forced to have dinner with him.
Like Beauty and the Beast.
It is. And then she's taken back to Rome as a spoil of war. She gets great quarters at first, plushy. It's not too bad, but then they take her to the Castel Sant'Angelo, where we know that she once held out against the cardinals so long ago. And that's the papal prisons. There's dungeons in there, so she's actually imprisoned in a dungeon, which is pretty unprecedented. Most time, even in actual war, you don't kill the elites. You take them and you ransom them.
Right.
You don't put them in dungeons. No, she's in an actual dungeon. She hardly sleeps. Yeah. She hardly eats because she's scared they're going to poison her.
Yeah, I would be too.
She becomes really deathly ill. Cesare plays horrible psychological pranks on her in the imprisonment, like bringing her out and saying that she's going to die today and get executed, and then just horrible things, but they don't really break her. It takes a while, but eventually she does sign over the rights to Imola and Forli. So eventually she gives in, she signs them away, and then she goes to Florence. She gets to leave. Obviously, it's been like 2 years at this point. So she finally gets to reunite with her children in Florence.
Yeah. She just lived in Florence.
Yeah, Florence is amazing. I love Florence. She did love Florence too. She had visited when she was younger, when she had Lorenzo de' Medici, and her soulmate was from Florence. I think that held something for her. But this is where she enters her retirement phase. Adventures are a thing of the past. She focuses on her children. She's a really devoted mom.
Becomes a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, she really wanted to teach her youngest, Giovanni, Ludovico, and then he becomes Giovanni. He's only about 7 at this time, and she's very excited to teach him how to ride and hunt, which she loved to do. She also finds solace in religion. She'd spend a lot of time at this beloved convent where she'd find peace and solitude. She had her own cell there outside of the main courtyard. She gets a marriage for her daughter and kind of just trying to set them up in life. Her eldest son becomes a bishop in 1507, but he's still he definitely takes after Girolamo. They talk about him being 30 and constantly hounding his mom for money and things. Yeah. She's like, Mom, I don't have the nicest clothes that the other bishops have. And he really wants to be a cardinal. He tries to get her too hard. Yeah, to be that cardinal. He doesn't get it. And she loved her botany, like we said, and she loved doing her scientific experiments. Finally, she had bouts of, we had talked about that she had malaria.
Yeah, malaria.
Eventually she gets sick and she dies in May of 1509 in Florence. So
how old is she then?
46. If you want to read more, I don't want to make this too long, but I do highly recommend if you want more. I mean, we did 3 episodes, but if you want even more detail, the book that I read was Tigress of Forli, Renaissance, Italy's most courageous and notorious countess. Yeah. Really readable. Good. Reads like a novel. So highly recommend. But we are now at the judgment part.
When you know the rules, you go first.
I know. I was trying to get this wrapped up. That normally I think ahead about this, and I've got my number. This is hard because we kind of talked about it at the beginning. Are we holding Caterina and other women to higher standards? Especially of this era, because, on the good, we know she cared for the people of the lower social order, women and children, that she didn't murder. But is it because she's a mother and a woman that we blame her more for the loss of innocent lives?
I think so. There's also the idea of I can make more, even if she didn't say that, that story.
I mean, if you know Caterina Sforza, if you've ever heard of her name, that's going to be the thing that you know about her. She was raised in really difficult circumstances. She was a child bride. Her first husband was horrible. He was not a good partner. She had to make do while getting continuously pregnant, raising children. Obviously, they're not raising them in the way that we think of today, but still, she's the one who's basically ruling just where she's at situationally. In Italy, it's just continually one thing after another, whether it's French are here, now Cesare is here with the French. I mean, she is faced with a lot of tough decisions. And then you add in assassinations are the name of the game. She literally grew up with having her father assassinated. Am I going to say that she is good for killing her best friend and the families and kids? No. Obviously, that's a huge moral stain. But, the problem is, if you think about, again, any sieges and warfare, that stuff's happening, unfortunately, every day. If somebody takes a city in a siege and they sack the city, it's not just soldiers that are getting killed, it's women, children. I don't want to act like this is the one instance where women and children die. And this makes me sound like I'm defending. Now I'm like, oh my God, is somebody going to play this back and be like, look, she doesn't care about women and children. I'm not trying to excuse that. Unfortunately, it's kind of the name of the game of that time.
She's not the only one.
I do think one that we know that she did not raise her skirts and say, I can make more. We know that she loved her children. We know that she took care of them. That was her her main focus, especially towards her end of her life, and the reason that she fought so hard. Imola and Forli, yeah, she was regent. It's not that she wasn't proud of that, but that was mainly her kids' inheritance. She's fighting for her children there.
Yeah.
And again, I think that just life threw her a lot of obstacles. She did the best that she could. I think if we put her misdeeds up against any Medici and even other Sforzas, I think you'll see there's not that much difference in terms of it. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not canonizing her to sainthood, but I think she's so underappreciated in terms of a historical figure. You know, we hear about Isabella of Castile and badass women. This is a woman who is literally changing, literally fighting on the front lines.
Yeah.
They are telling her to retreat, and she will not retreat, and she's going to do it the way that she survives it all is admirable.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I don't know. Where are you at?
I'm actually around the same as be 65-35 or 70-30 for many of the same reasons. I think, obviously, she was born in a certain time. She was smart, capable, taught how to fight, but she was also brought up in a world of assassinations. And so, of course, even though she wasn't in love with her first husband when he died, what happened to the people, the assassins wasn't anything. I think that she should be, even though it's so horrifying to me, that was commonplace. And her holding fortress and getting other people on her side, I think shows her wit and smarts, political savviness.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's a political monster. In the best, that form of endearment, not a bad thing.
Right. I think her flaw was that, and in a way it makes sense, she was in this arranged marriage where there wasn't that passion. And I know you said she had probably a little bit of something on the side before whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
But whack-a-mole, I think, was her
love. No, her love. No, it was her first love, I think.
Right. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. I feel like in a way she almost went teenage.
Yeah.
Where the loss of your first love, and especially the fact that he was assassinated in front of her, it was pretty much kill everybody.
I do want to also point out, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I know that if you're frustrated and you're Cesare Borgia is awful, FYI, he does die before her. He dies in 1507. I think she dies in 1509. He gets killed on campaign. And he also had syphilis. And as knows, his face was disfigured at the end because of syphilis. So he gets his comeuppance, just FYI.
There we go.
Sorry. I know. I just had to throw that out there because I didn't want you to think that he won, because I know it's kind of a bitter pill to swallow that she has to sign things away. And you're oh, I can't believe that they won. But yeah, Pope Alexander dies. Pope Alexander dies. He has syphilis and dies. The only one left is Lucrezia, the daughter. The Borgia dynasty dies out. So fuck them.
No. I think her bravery and trying to save the cities that she wanted for her family and for herself showed obviously a lot of gumption and bravery during that. There's some dark moments there with her after Whack-a-Mole's death. Like I said, I can kind of see where her brain would have gone with first love, and it seems like she was a woman who loved to love.
If you're thinking about the time frame, I can't remember exactly how long between assassinations of her husbands, but after your second husband's assassinated, I think I would kind of go a little bit bananas too.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, this again, I can't believe that I'm going through this all over again.
Right.
And again, I actually love this guy this time around. Maybe not love, but I think he's really hot.
and love certain aspects of him. That's how I would place her. I think more as the badass countess, but she has her own demons and flaws. But like you said, if you're comparing it to others, I think she's held to that different standard.
Well, and from the limited, we know that she talked to Savonarola a little bit about how she felt in the aftermath. That doesn't cancel it out, but at least,
I mean, I think it gives something into her.
At least it's not like Werner von Braun, or it's like, it's fine. Like, I think after a certain amount of time, she realized what had happened, whether or not it was just because her reputation was in tatters or not, who knows, but she was talking to somebody about it. And you can also look at her being more religious in her later lives as that, to make amends, possibly. Yeah,
I would see that. It seems like she had that recognition. She retreats to that kind of more private life where she could have kept fighting.
Yeah, if she wanted to spill, countless more lives, she could have tried to get Imola and Forli back or do something, but she was just resigned at that point, unfortunately, beaten down and sick and all that after all she had been through. It is a life of highs and lows.
Oh,
the highest of highs, the lowest of low. In the middle, she gets a little bit of stability and peace and true love before the outside world comes pounding in.
Definitely a remarkable life.
Yeah, and that's what I'm like. I know 3 parts is a lot, but I really didn't want to. It was like, how am I supposed to slam this on 1 and even 2? Like, to cover the assassinations alone, and then introduce the Borgias and all that. But I'm really glad to share her story. And I know she's not perfect, but I think she deserves her time in the sun. And where's that HBO miniseries? Come on, guys.
Yeah, I would watch it. Yeah, I was thoroughly, I don't know if I'd say entertained, because some moments were a little bit horrifying, but it was definitely an interesting historical story. I did not know. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to have entertained and giving you all the gory details. We got everything: assassination, the Borgias, syphilis, chip bags.
Yep. No chip bagging this time, luckily. But I shall never forget. But thank you. And thank you to everybody who's listened along to our 3-parter. We really appreciate it. And as I said before, check out our Patreon, check out our Instagram. And unless we hear a strong no, we don't want that, which you could email us at ambivalent.offenders.
Just right now.
Yes. No. At gmail.com. We're going to be doing that dueling series between John Brown and Aaron Burr. So that should be a fun, slightly different take, and see who comes up on top.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Well, thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon, or talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.